So Mike Hughes, the Minnesota Vikings cornerback that we took 4 years ago with the 30th selection in the draft, and he is now booming with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's having his best year ever in the NFL. He is the 8th rated cornerback according to PFF. And I remember it was just like, I remember this video like it was yesterday. It was Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman on draft night when talking about drafting Mike Hughes, and they both kind of looked at each other and they saw him fall to 30. Zimmer was excited and he said, "We got our guy." And there was a certain sense of like investment from the Vikings in the Mike Hughes. Obviously, you're putting a first round pick into him. And Mike Zimmer was excited. This was a guy they had circled on their board. So, little background story about Mike Hughes before we, why the Vikings would let him go. Mike Hughes, he came onto the scene in his first year. He had a pick six in his first ever game against the San Francisco 49ers, and I was ecstatic. He was drafted the year after the Vikings made the NFC Championship, and then Mike Hughes, he had an okay year, but he definitely showed some really talented qualities. He definitely showed after his first 6 games, he had something, but eventually in week 6, he did end up tearing his ACL, and that took him out for the remainder of the season. And then he ended up playing the following 2 years in and out of the lineup with just certain injuries, and he was okay. He was nothing too great. He was rated poorly on PFF, and I definitely was disappointed in him coming off a torn ACL. But that's the thing. If you think about this now, looking about how just stupid this move was by the Minnesota Vikings, and it's just a little, it is something little like letting a cornerback go in the offseason that can make so much impact on your season this year. This is why I love the NFL. So we let Mike Hughes go this offseason. After in his rookie year, he tore his ACL, and the next 2 years he was still banged up with injuries, and he was only making $1.2 million this year. In his 5th year option, he was making 9.8, but they had no intention of picking up that 5th year option. So you don't even, money, not even a thing in this. So if that's an argument, it doesn't really make sense. So this is where I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. The Vikings cornerback room, it's not like the Vikings cornerback room is something special right now either. It's not like going into the season where you're saying we got an extremely talented group. I thought going into the season, we had Dantzler. I thought Dantzler would take a step up. He didn't. But just going into the season, I thought we had front end talent, but not a lot of depth. So then they had a guy like Mike Hughes, a low-risk, high-reward player at $1.2 million, and they let him go. And I'm going to throw up the statistic right here of comparing Bashaud Breeland and Mike Hughes this season. So as you see, actually, as of right now, after the game yesterday, Mike Hughes has moved up to 6th with an 81.3 grade, as you see right here. Bashaud Breeland sitting at a 47.2. That is 124th in the NFL. And the reason I'm comparing him to Bashaud Breeland because he was the guy we decided to go sign instead of bringing back in Mike Hughes. He went with kind of the more veteran guy. And listen, Breeland's been better of late. Just not, the numbers don't lie here. If you're talking about yards per coverage snap, 1.18 compared to 1.82. And if we're just looking at the running game, obviously corners have an impact on the running game. I'm not saying they affect it just as much as the front 7. But if you're looking here, missed tackle percentage, 5.9%, 25th for Mike Hughes, and then Bashaud Breeland, 19.5. That is terrible. That means once every 5 times when a running back sees him, he's making a miss. Passer rating allowed, Mike Hughes is still up there at 101.7, but then, we got Mike Hughes over here at 112.6, and then the salary, about even. So this is what I just don't really understand with the Vikings. If you go back to the clip of Zimmer and Spielman saying, we got our guy, but then you let that guy go. And you don't even allow him the chance of a full 3 years to recover from a torn ACL. I guess they maybe thought, this guy's the next Adrian Peterson, but I guess nobody's the next Adrian Peterson. What AP did coming off that torn ACL will never be done again. And I just think they moved off a year too early from Mike Hughes. What did you really have to lose if you re-signed him for 1.8? You were just going to add corner. You still could have brought in Bashaud Breeland maybe for some quarterback or cornerback competition, but just adding depth. That's just I just don't really understand it. It's not like you drafted a bunch of young secondary guys anyways in this draft. So Spielman, this was just one. He just let him go a year too early. And Mike Hughes, hey, good for you, man. He's absolutely balling out in Kansas City. He had a good game last night, and he's a 6th rated corner in the league. How funny is that? It's just one little mistake like that in the offseason, I mean, it could have changed this year. I mean, we could have, I mean, especially how close the Vikings games have been this year, really makes me think maybe we could be sitting at 7, 8, 9 wins if we kept even a guy like Mike Hughes. Could have made a difference. Who knows? Let me know what you guys think down below about losing Mike Hughes and the addition of Brashad Breeland in the offseason. It's really turning out as of right now to be just a bad move by Rick Spielman. Let me know what you guys think down below. Skol Vikes.